Welcome back to the Integrated Leader Podcast, where we talk about real leadership for real people. I'm your host, Lauren Marie, and this week we're diving into the human side of work. Today's episode is called What It Really Means to Lead a Human-Centered Culture. Let's start here. Human-centered leadership is often misunderstood. It gets dismissed as soft, overly accommodating, or impractical. And yet, when you walk into a meeting where people feel overlooked, overextended, or underutilized, you can feel the cost of that misunderstanding. It's not emotional, it's actually operational. Retention drops, performance plateaus, and trust erodes. Somewhere along the way, many leaders were taught that professionalism meant emotional distance. That if you want to be respected, you had to be polished, objective, and untouchable. That model produces output, but not loyalty, growth, or long-term effectiveness. And for many leaders, especially those who have risen in performance-driven cultures, the idea of human-centered feels like a luxury. But I'd argue it's the opposite. It's a strategic necessity. What does human-centered leadership actually mean? Well, it means asking this question. Am I leading people or am I managing tasks? Because culture doesn't begin with a vision statement. It begins with how people experience your leadership, day to day, meeting to meeting. It shows up in your decision making, your tone, your follow through. Let's break it down into 4 parts. 1, people are seen as capable and contextual. Being human-centered doesn't mean lowering expectations. It means understanding that performance is context-dependent. People bring their full lives with them to work. That doesn't mean you manage their personal life. It means you recognize that clarity, flexibility, and trust impact performance. You don't need to know everything. You just need to design roles, feedback, and systems in ways that accounts for reality, not just theory. 2, clarity and responsiveness is greater than controls and optics. Too often, leadership defaults to performative urgency, where speed, visibility, and control are rewarded over alignment. Human-centered leaders stay grounded. They don't overreact, and they set clear expectations and make space for real conversations about what's working and what's not. This isn't about making things emotional, it's about making them functional. And that requires candor, responsiveness, and trust, not just performance. 3, accountability and respect coexist. A human-centered workplace is not one without pressure. It's one where accountability is direct, consistent, and delivered with respect. You do not need to be everyone's therapist. But if you want people to grow, they need to trust how feedback is delivered. Too often, leaders avoid conversations until it's too late, or they deliver feedback so bluntly that it damages motivation. Human-centered means finding the middle space, where the standard is high and the message lands. And finally, 4, systems reflect what you actually value. Your culture isn't defined by what you say in meetings. It's actually defined by what you schedule, fund, promote, and repeat. So ask yourself, do your meetings reflect real priorities or just habits? Do we reward thoughtful input or quick agreement? And are we designing for performance and sustainability or just short-term wins? Leaders often say, our people are our greatest asset. But if your systems treat them like liabilities or bandwidth, they will notice. This is where integration comes in. Integrated leaders align values with execution. They don't toggle between being results-driven or relationship-minded. They build cultures where both exist. When you're integrated, you don't abandon performance. You redefine what supports it. You create clarity without rigidity. You build trust without over-accommodating. And you prioritize growth for the business and the people inside of it. Human-centered leadership isn't a detour. It's a competitive advantage because it builds durable, aligned, and adaptive teams. If your team could describe the experience of working with you in 3 words, what would you hope they'd say? And what might they actually say? That space between the two, it's where your leadership gets to grow next. That's it for today's episode of The Integrated Leader. If this sparks something, bring it to your next leadership meeting. Ask your team where systems and reality don't match, and listen well. Tomorrow, we'll explore burnout, boundaries, and the illusion of hustle. You don't want to miss it. I'll see you tomorrow.